Welcome to the Deep in State presented by Eclipse. I'm Nick Hawks. On today's episode, we have Sam Lewis from DIMO. This episode is sponsored by Eclipse Lab. If you are ready to push limits of what's possible on chain, you should build your own rollup with Eclipse. We'll have a little bit more on them later in the show. Before we get stuck in, make sure that you hit the like and subscribe button. That alerts you to when the next episode drops and also helps us bring great guests like Sam on the show. Sam, welcome, man.
Thank you for having me. I wish you could see my setup right now. I just moved into a new apartment in New York. I'm usually at the office with folks, but my desk has not come yet. So I'm literally hiding on a camping chair right now, trying to look professional.
Right on. Well, very fancy white wall in the back there. So good job.
Thanks.
Let's see. So over at DIMO, what you're doing is a little bit odd. There's actually not a title yet for it, but you're helping run governance and protocol and grants and probably 9 other things over there. You guys just had an AMA and you have 4 different proposals going out there. Do you want to?
Yeah, just like helium as hips, ours are DIPs, DIMO Improvement Proposals. So yes, we had our AMA earlier this morning. I can sort of run through the significance of the 4, and we can talk a little bit more in depth about them. The voting will go live for those on Thursday. So the way we work at DIMO is we put proposals up for 7 days for community review, and then they go up for a vote for an additional 7 days. So if you are in the DIMO community, I recommend that you go delegate your tokens to yourself or someone else so you're ready to vote on Thursday. But it was super exciting. So I think the first one is really exciting just because, and as I'm sure you guys will remember, it reminds me of earlier in the helium days where DIP 10 is approving a hardware license for a new manufacturer. The company is Hashdog, who's a subsidiary of JDI, who originally, obviously Bobcat, made hundreds of thousands of IoT hotspots back in the day. And I think the reason it's so exciting, if we get this one through, is because, Nick, I don't know if you remember when Helium sort of went from making their own hotspots to all of a sudden it's decentralized with whichever hip that was. And you sort of see, obviously the climate was different in terms of crypto bull run, but you start to see things go vertical in terms of growth. And we just think it's a super great opportunity to decentralize, create less single points of failure, produce different hardware devices at different price points. So we're super excited about that one. The second one is an amendment. So we
hang on a second, Sam.
Yeah.
You'd said one thing that I want to make sure is clear as you talked about delegating. So do you stake your tokens towards someone who votes on your behalf? Do you do it? Like, how does that whole thing work?
Yes. So the way it works is and you only have to do this once if you're delegating to yourself. So let's say any DIMO token holder is able to vote on proposals. They go to delegate.dimo.zone, and all you have to do is one time delegate your tokens to yourself, and then you're able to vote on all the proposals to come. Or awesome. If you'd like to not vote yourself, we have some recommended people that you can delegate your tokens to that are super involved in the community, or you can type in any OX address of anybody you know to do so as well.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Let's see, for this first dip, the kind of equivalent to HIP 19 over at Helium with the manufacturers, is there going to be an onboard fee? I know Max has always been a huge proponent of onboard fees. Is that something that DIMO is also looking at doing?
So as of now, onboard fees get paid by the manufacturer. So that would be similar to how the AutoPi is working today. Cool. Also, one big detail I think I left out, which I was going to get to next, is that this device is going to come likely at a much lower price point because it leverages the Helium IoT network with LoRaWAN protocol. So we're super excited because, you hear in crypto all the time, well, not that we like to think of DIMO as a crypto project, but crypto-powered projects that talk about composability. You hear that a lot with DeFi, and this feels like one of the biggest. I know everyone probably listening to this call has a special place in their heart for DePIN because they feel like it's real world utility using crypto. And this feels like real world composability. Like DIMO has a manufacturer that is able to serve our use case with a much cheaper price point because they're leveraging another Web3 DePIN protocol. I just think it's super awesome.
Yeah. And composability for folks that aren't keeping up to date on the latest in DeFi terminology is basically like the idea that you can just move information from one system to another, that there's this kind of seamless transition.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's probably like the
And
layman's way of explaining it.
so that's the first proposal. The second one is the other three are amendments. So we generally, like, if we have an adjustment to an old proposal, we won't just have a new proposal. We'll call it like DIP 2 Amendment 1, whatever, semantics. But so the first amendment is to baseline issuance, right? So DIMO, as many of you might know, for keeping your connection on for several weeks in a row, you get DIMO rewards in exchange for doing that. And so every connection type gets rewarded a certain amount of points on a weekly basis. So today, I think there's smart car connections, there is a Tesla API. So those are the two software types. And then there's the AutoPi hardware device. So this will be a second hardware device, and it will slot in giving 2,000 weekly points relative to the 6,000 that the AutoPi today gives. So it's less, but obviously a lower price point, and it produces a lot of this like similar baseline data, just some advanced data and potential hardware compatibility down the line that would be missing there.
Dang. Super cool stuff. Let's see. Let's take a quick break and talk about today's sponsor, eclipse Labs. One of the super cool parts about doing this show is we get to talk about all kinds of the geeky stuff and tons of projects across the space, including stuff that helps deepen projects that run the rails for them. One of those is today's show sponsor, eclipse Labs. They're a customizable roll-up provider providing app-specific chains for several deepen projects. They allow you to pick your virtual machine, your base layer, and additional customizations to enable new functionality for your DApp. Eclipse is committed to helping projects build on deepen. Check them out at eclipse.builders and check out the card above for a link to an interview we did with them if you haven't seen it already. Let's see. The last time we talked to Andy, over at DIMO, he was bringing up the grants project. Can you talk a little bit about what you guys are doing with grants?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've started to get some really good. So there was a ton of interest up front, and candidly, there was a couple of weeks where we were working out our own process to figure out like how do we handle all this inbound things like that. But we're now totally open for business with this initial $2 million fund. So recently, made a grant, and there's grants we're probably working through doing now, and there's aspirational things that I personally would love to see. We're putting a ton of focus on doing grants around onboarding new vehicle types, right? So that can mean decoding cars, that can mean more direct integrations, things like that. So we recently handed out a grant on that front. We're also exploring new mechanisms and trying to provide clarity around the DIMO token in general and nodes and clients and potential things like that. So I think a big thing we've learned early on is we really want to fund things that are open source and reusable long after the grant is over, right? So instead of funding, especially in the position we're at, like, smart contract code, all those things, like incredibly valuable right now. But again, like we also certainly want to solicit, really fun things to think about. I know a couple other people think like one of the moments that DIMO utility for whether it's a single player with the app or somebody or like a group of friends, there's going to be some viral moment where someone makes an awesome game. Maybe there's like a step-in style game that comes out based around vehicle health or a Mario Kart game, Snake. I don't know. We would love to hear from anyone working on those things because it's just like, it would be so fun. So we hope to see all sorts of different things. I'm happy to go through different types of projects we're looking for or whatnot.
Yeah. Well, I would love to hear the different projects you're looking for. But before we get there, are you seeing that grantees are going to be kind of businesses? Are they going to be community members, a mix of the two? What are you seeing so far, and what do you hope to see?
In terms of who we're funding or looking to fund? Yep. So I think a mix. I mean, obviously it's great to fund people that have been active community members. And I think the stance we take is like when we fund, kind of going back to what I said about like the open source reusable public goods that we want to fund, we view ourselves as the Ignite. It's called the Ignite grant team, by the way, a fancy name we came up with. We view ourselves as our customer is the community. They authorize through a proposal that the Treasury give us these funds. And so what we don't want to turn it into is some sort of, we're going to seed fund a bunch of like potential businesses. Like we need to be able to go, like if we fund something that turns out to be a huge business or a huge business built on DIMO, and this is the start of that, that's great. But we need to be able to go back to the community and be like, here are the DIMO tokens that were rewarded to us, and here's what you're going to get on an ongoing basis for it, if that makes sense. So, but really all walks of life in terms of who we're willing to fund.
Got it. Okay, you talked about games. That sounds pretty rad. What's something else with the grants program that you either really need at DEMO or be super nice to have, but you just haven't seen an application come in yet? Hopefully, someone watching this sees this and it compels them to submit a grant proposal for
Yeah.
where
So
you guys need.
definitely, not just games, but like really interesting building blocks for applications on Demo, whether it's games or other sort of service providers. I think, like, candidly, there's ongoing work that's getting closer and closer with regards to, developer SDKs and things like that will unlock that. But we're certainly well in the and we certainly want to hear from people well in advance of that. Let's see. I think certainly work around trips and sort of like the ability to demonstrate trips in different formats, whether that's CSV export, visual representations of that. I think that unlocks a lot of utility. I already mentioned sort of some of the node potential node verification and data credit payments. So we're playing around with the idea. None of this is final, but of sort of implementing a demo credit type system and sort of ironing out the way that the tokenomics works. So a bunch of potential things that can be done there. Issuing and verifying verifiable credentials for any business. So you might think about things like e-titles or whether a car is insured or whether they are a taxi that is approved to drive in a certain area. Like, how are the ways that we bring those different things on chain? And then in general, I'd say, like, I mean, I could go on and on forever, but then in general, the last one I'd say super valuable, different on-ramps for logging in or, registering a car on the DEMO network, right? So there's DEMO Mobile today, which Digital Infrastructure Inc., the operating company, the core team behind DEMO built. There's going to be some fleet applications for that use case coming up. But what about things like people that love to race cars, or like there's avid car communities out there? Like, I see these forums that are crazy. What are the other ways, deployer apps, host patron stuff? What are the other ways we can sort of, strap rockets on this thing?
Love it, dude. It's what you guys are doing is super exciting. It's cool to see all the growth and all of the kind of surface area for luck and for opportunity that you guys are providing to the community. So really appreciate you coming on today and sharing what's going on with Demo. Super excited to have you back on when the next big thing pops. But Sam, thanks for coming on and telling us what's the latest in Demo. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Can't wait to be back.